In today's show, we're going to discuss one of the biggest challenges faced by property buyers today, how to choose a good buyer's agent when there are so many enthusiastic amateurs out there. I'm going to be chatting with Veronica Morgan, an experienced buyer's agent and buyer's agent mentor, about why having an experienced and a skilled buyer's agent has never been more important than ever. However, with so many self-proclaimed experts out there, it can be challenging to identify a qualified professional who can truly represent your best interest. Now, before you say to yourself, oh, these two are biased, they've got a barrow to push, listen in as we explore the qualities and credentials to look for in a buyer's agent. So whether you're a first-time buyer, or a home buyer, or an experienced investor, join us as we explore the world of buyer's agents, and we'll help you find the right professionals to help you achieve your real estate goals.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Buying a home is often the most significant financial decision people make. It often involves a significant amount of time, money, emotion, and it's not something most people take lightly. And that's one of the reasons more and more home buyers and property investors engage a buyer's agent to help them navigate the complex field of finding and purchasing their property. However, what many buyers don't realise is that not all buyer's agents are created equal. In fact, most of them aren't even experienced enough to handle such important crucial responsibilities. So how do you choose a professional, experienced buyer's agent? That's the question I'm going to be asking my guest today, Veronica Morgan, an experienced buyer's agent and buyer's agent mentor with more than 20 years experience in this competitive property market under her belt. Hi, Veronica.
Hey, Michael. Nice to see you again.
Fantastic, Veronica. Now, I could have gone on and explained how you're the co-founder of the Home Buyers Academy, the co-host of
the Elephant in
the Room podcast, and you've also on Foxtel, I remember that great show, Location with Bryce, Relocation Australia. And you've, over the last little while, become a buyer's agent mentor. I want to find out a little bit more about that. But it shows that you're clearly experienced in this industry.
Experience or, just don't know when to give up, one or the other.
Well, when we started, and I started about 20 years ago, and you probably swapped from the dark side of selling property to helping buyers 17 odd years ago, most people didn't even know what a buyer's agent was. So why is it that we're hearing so much more about them today?
Oh, it's a really good question, and I've got a couple of theories on this. One is that with the proliferation of more television shows, of course, Relocation Australia and Location Australia, they were around the early teens, I think the first series started in 2011. And, we were showcasing what buyer's agents can do, how we can help people. It was very much about the buyer's journey, But there's been a proliferation of shows really, from The Block to Buying Byron to Lux Listings to whatever, really, and a lot coming on free to wear as well. They're really ramping up the glamour end of the industry, if you like, and making it look like this really hot, fun sort of $1 million listing type of profession. And look, to be quite frank, I don't think it is. I think that's a lot of unrealistic hype. That's really just the drama of it. The reality of it is a lot of really hard, dedicated work. But I do think that glamorization and the proliferation of these shows that really gloss over the nitty-gritty, the boring stuff, the stuff that really doesn't make great television, but they are bringing up the awareness, and they are attracting, I think, a different breed of buyer's agent into the industry as well.
There's also a number of courses out there, some run by experienced professional buyer's agents, but they, as you say, glamorize it and say you can do it part-time. It's okay if you love property. It doesn't matter that you're really a carpenter or an electrician. By the way, you can do it part-time. You can get virtual assistants in the Philippines. You don't even have to go to the property. Interestingly, Veronica, last week I listened to another podcast where somebody was explaining how you actually can do the negotiations by just getting the local property manager who understand what a good investment is to do the hard work for you and do the look and feel on the ground.
Yes, that is a very interesting shortcut, and it's very convenient the way it's pitched. It's like, well, why would you need a buyer's agent? Or if you are a buyer's agent, why would I need to limit myself and learn a local area when I can buy anywhere, because all I need to do is get local networks of property managers. And it's sort of interesting because if I look at all the due diligence that I would do in my business, and certainly what I teach new buyers agents, the due diligence that needs to be done, and even in Home Buyer Academy, where we teach first home buyers how to buy their own property because they can't afford a buyer's agent, these people would know more than some of these buyer's agents, because these buyer's agents who think that the only thing they need to do in terms of their due diligence is to get a property manager who has no fiduciary duty towards them, is not licensed or is not in an agreement with them, who is going out there because they're basically wanting to win some more business. Let's face it. I mean, what can possibly go wrong? And that they know what to look for over and above whether or not this would be a good property for tenants. Now, that is not enough to determine whether a property is a good investment or not. That is just one tiny piece of an entire due diligence process that should be done. You should definitely get advice from a property manager if you're an investor, but that is by no means anywhere near a drop in the bucket of what needs to be done. So it is quite alarming to me that is put forward as okay and enough.
Interesting. Now, some people are going to be listening to this and saying, oh, these guys have got their own businesses. They've got something to sell, our services, and so therefore they're biased. And the answer is we are biased, but I think you've been around long enough and you've got a big enough profile, and I have, to know that we are biased to actually help consumers and level the playing field. And actually, we have been around long enough to have the results on the board that we understand what's going on. So yes, we are going to say some things that some people may not be happy to hear and others will say are controversial, but it's really in the best interest, we hope, of the consumer, because at the moment, the bar to get into being a buyer's agent is very, very low. The qualifications needed, are really minimal. I've often jokingly said it actually takes more to learn to be a manicurist and do people's nails in all those stores you see up and down the streets than it does to be a buyer's agent.
It's alarming, but true. So the licensing process that any new buyer's agent needs to go through in this country is roughly the same state to state. So the actual qualification need is roughly the same. How you go about getting that and whether or not you need any work experience does differ. So only in the eastern states, and we're not even talking all the eastern states, we're just talking New South Wales, Victoria, and the ACT, is it required that a new buyer's agent would not only have the qualification, but experience. Now, the problem is with that is that the qualification, so your real estate license, you can actually do that without doing any buyer's agent topics. So you can become fully minted without one topic being done. In the license, even if you chose the electives or looked for the electives, there are none there for negotiating from the position of a buyer, and there are none there for due diligence. So even if you've chosen every elective that could possibly be loosely attributed to being a buyer's agent, and there are 4, then you can still come out without any experience or knowledge of those skills. So when you need to get experience and work for a licensed real estate agent, that's great, but you could actually get that working as assistant in a sales office. You can still come out, even in those states where you need experience, with the wrong type of experience and still not learn any skills. And so this is something that consumers need to be very, very aware of. And also you've got this proliferation of people that are in such a hurry to run their own business, such a hurry to become entrepreneurs in this space, that they're trying to do the backdoor Benny, I call it, which is the backdoor, the shortcut into the industry. And they'll go and get licensed in Queensland, where the requirements are the smallest, the lowest barrier to entry, and then they'll seek for mutual recognition in other states and territories. So you've got a very dangerously low barrier to entry. And then you've got a dangerous cohort of new buyer's agents that are deliberately looking to shortcut and circumvent those barriers that are put in place. And you've got to ask, who's protecting the consumer in all of this?
Well, a lot of these new buyer's agents are being excited by the prospect of earning huge amounts of money and learning along the way and spending other people's money, not theirs. really, this is too important a decision to even the purchase of your home or an investment, to let somebody else learn along the way, getting their experience on your money.
With your money. Well, I actually saw an ad for one of these programs which said, learn property investing with your client's money.
Yes.
I was horrified at that. I had to take a screenshot because I couldn't quite believe my eyes. I was absolutely mortified when I read that, because that is not a badge of honor. That's actually alarming. That's scary. And any potential client, I'd be wanting to say, right, what are your runs on the board? How long have you been in this industry? What success stories do you have? And if somebody's trying to give you, lovely little examples of instant equity uplift, that's one of my latest favorite sayings, to say that, well, this client bought this property and 6 months later they had it valued and they've already made $50,000. That is not evidence of a system or a strategy that works. We need years of evidence. We don't just need a nice little 6 months happy story.
Sure. Well, I've seen only last night on Instagram a buyer's agent show some properties he was doing homework and research and diligence on, and he was actually in one of those new estates, and there was no properties at all. There was all the land, and he was saying how he's handpicking the sites, but they were all vacant. And I thought, this fellow doesn't understand anything about investment fundamentals. So a lot of buyer's agents also are calling themselves property strategists, and they're not. Even worse,
you don't need any qualifications to call yourself a investment property advisor. And PIPA is obviously the Property Investment Professional Association. So they do have a qualified property investment advisor course, which I've done. I think you've done, haven't you?
Yes.
And that is a voluntary course that those who seek to extend their learnings will do. But they've put out a recent press release about people claiming to have a qualification that they don't even have. And REBA, Real Estate Buyers Agents Association, has come up with similar posts about people that have been reported to be claiming to be REBA members. Same deal. So this is something, once again, consumers need to think, okay, how long has this buyer's agent been in the business? What sort of track record do they have? Can they demonstrate evidence over many years that their recommendations do actually work for their clients? And are they members of these associations they're claiming to be members of? So they need to be verified and checked. And also, do they even have the license in the right state? Some of these buyers agents are buying borderless. They're buying all over the country, and they don't even have a license in the states in which they're buying.
Well, it's interesting. Some of them are saying that I investigate all capital cities, but also every regional area in Australia. You can't be an expert at that. And then they fly in, they fly out. Some don't even do that. We said a moment ago they get local people to do it. But I know in Queensland, in our Brisbane office, we sort of laugh at the fly-in, fly-out ones who would buy things thinking it's a bargain because they've come from Sydney when the price difference is so different and the sort of property is different. You've got to understand why one side of the street is different to the other, why one end of the street is different to the other. But there are those fly-in, fly-out buyer's agents too, aren't they?
There's an arrogance that comes from ignorance.
Beautiful wording. I like that.
There you go. Arrogance, quote me on that. And, it really beggars belief. And it's like, oh my God, you don't even understand. You don't even know enough to know that what you're saying is bullshit. And I think am I allowed to say that on your podcast?
No, that's on your podcast. You can't use that word on mine.
Okay, you have to beep over it. Sorry for the purists out there. I've got a potty mouth.
So apologies. I know that.
Apologies.
You say that.
An unapologetic potty mouth. But you have these people that know just enough to be dangerous, and often they're very good at convincing people because they actually convince themselves. Yep. And if you don't know enough to know that they're feeding you this garbage, then they would pass a lie detector test. They don't even do it with bad intentions.
No.
I honestly think that what they're saying is
enthusiastic amateurs. They have, they want to do these things. But then what is there to protect the consumer, Veronica?
Nothing, because unfortunately our regulators do not recognise the risks. That they see, particularly in our licensing, right? They get that their consumers there's risk of theft, if you like, of a trust account. So the barrier to entry for a sales agent includes this idea that they need to learn trust accounting, same with property management. And our regulators do thoroughly understand the risk of having large amounts of money that are not the agent's money, they're their client's money held in trust. And obviously, rightly so, there needs to be regulation around that. But what they have not realize, and mainly because I think buyer's agents to date is still a small percentage of the total agent population, they really haven't fully appreciated the risk to consumers of being guided in this very expensive process to buy potentially the only property some people will actually ever own, and to put them in the hands of people who don't have experience, and they don't recognize how that can go horribly, horribly wrong. And it can go horribly, horribly wrong. And let's forget buyer's agents just for a moment. You probably heard me often say one of my favorite reports is the CoreLogic's Pain and Gain report.
Yep.
That is a report that comes out every quarter that measures how many properties in Australia sold that quarter and how many of those sold at a loss. So if 600,000 properties transact roughly every year, that's 150,000 a quarter. And of that 150,000 a quarter, roughly, give or take, 10%, so at least roughly around 15,000 properties every quarter in this country is transacting at a loss. Now, that's a nominal loss. That's a loss on sale price.
Yep.
That's not loss in terms of costs, in terms of real loss, right? So if it's that easy to lose money, even in the height of the boom, I think the lowest it went down to, I think it was 8.7% or something. So even in the height of the boom, more than 10,000 properties would sell at a loss every quarter. That's 40,000 a year, right? At the height of the boom.
And they're people who sold their property. What about all those who held on?
Yes, have yet to sell. Or then if we took out the costs, and that's even if they even sold it for $1 more than they paid. So what if they renovated it? What about the stamp duty? What about the interest costs? What about all that stuff, all the holding costs, et cetera, et cetera? So there is potentially a situation in this country where a huge percentage is actually worth less than what the people paid for it. And some of these people have owned properties. It's not just like they bought it yesterday and it takes a while to make some money. We're talking some long hold periods here. So it is a risky business. And I think too many people are cavalier about buying property. They think that you can't lose. And I'm here to remind them they can. And so if you're going to pay for an advisor, make sure that advisor actually knows what they're doing, because they're just going to add insult to injury otherwise. If you're going to screw up your property purchase, don't pay someone else to screw it up for you. Do it all by yourself for free.
And that's not hard to do. So therefore, you've got to make the right decisions. And to make the right decisions, you've got to get the right advice. And we've just realised that, well, we both knew, but we're explaining that some of the advice given, while with the best intentions, is not qualified advice. So I think buyer's agents have been a boon to the consumers. They have helped a lot of people. And I think it's swung a bit the other way over the last couple of years, because while there are a lot of professionals, I know in your team, they're ex-selling agents, same in ours. So our buyer's agents are not enthusiastic amateurs. When we're hiring new people, boy, do we get lots of inquiries from really nice people who love property and bought one property, but all our buyer's agents have been on the other side for many years as well. And they're all investors themselves, so they own property and they've got a level of experience. So buyer's agents can help you a lot, but the rise of buyer's agents in general, well, not so good buyer's agents, I'm trying to be courteous with the words I'm using, have actually been bad for the consumer.
I think so, and they're bad for the industry too. And this is something that I think a lot of buyer's agents that have gone into the business because they like property. I love property and I hate my day job. So it's sort of a bit of a logical thing. I know I could become a buyer's agent. And that's true. Yes, you could. But then when they're out there on their own, starting to try to do deals, and suddenly it occurs to some of these people, I don't actually know whether that agent is telling me the truth or not. Or I know I need to do due diligence. What do I need to check? Like, what do I need to check? Because that's not covered in the licensing. So if you're not working for the type of buyer's agent that has very rigorous processes around this, or how much should I pay? How do I advise my client on what to pay? All of this stuff is stuff that I learnt myself. One of the reasons I put together the mentoring program is because I've realized that in 17 years of being a buyer's agent, I've learned a lot of things the hard way, but I also brought into it 6 years of property experience through being on the sales side. So I'd learned what a property that doesn't sell well looks like versus what a property that does sell well. And then started interrogating, because I've got a critical eye, to started really understanding what does make capital growth, what does make a good investment. Started educating myself. But that's been a long, long journey, to get to the point where I could consider myself an expert. One of the things that there's no clear pathway to learn that stuff. And there's a lot of misinformation out there as well, and a lot of false hope, I guess. And a lot of these new buyers agents that I've spoken to, and some of the people that are in the program, they're like, "Wow, I realized only when I was already in it." Like, it's like being chucked in the deep end of the pool and realizing I don't actually know how to swim. I'm just treading water here. I don't actually know how to get back to the edge. And so that's very much was like, right, these people, they can often be well-meaning, but they can suddenly find themselves with clients, suddenly with their heads spinning and the stress levels go through the roof because they're like, we don't actually know what we're doing.
Well, I know that selling agents love working with certain buyers agents who are professional and they can talk the same language too, but they also see some of these young buyers agents as shark bait, and actually they know how to take advantage of them.
Well, let's not say they're all young either. Some of these aren't that young, but they're young in the sense of their career. Look, I've heard sales agents telling stories off the record that will make your toes curl in terms of the prices that have been paid, the way that they've manipulated these new buyers agents, the naivety there, and that they're just not reading the play well enough. Also, that sometimes there's a competition between some that they know each other and they play them off against each other and actually make them compete with each other. So their clients are actually really suffering at the end of this and probably have no idea it's even going on. And then you've got other sales agents that have said to me, "Oh, look, I don't bring our crappy off markets to you. There's this buyer's agent, Joe Bloggs. I give them more to him or her because they buy everything because they sell this pitch to their clients that we buy everything off market."
Yep.
And they're laughing about the fact that it's so easy to just offload their stuff. Then you get the stories of the regional and interstate sales agents telling me stories about these people that buy sight unseen, having the local, property manager go and inspect the property. And they're like, "Oh, this is gold. These people have no idea what's a good property in this area and what's not. And I'm offloading all the crap that, I'm basically going through my database of investors that I know would sell if they could. And we're saying, I've got a buyer for you." And then because they're feeding all their clients into the area, they're actually pushing prices up. It's alarming.
Interesting story. So there are a lot of horror stories. So how does the consumer tell the difference between a good buyer's agent, somebody who's going to protect them, and one that's going to cost them money?
The very first one is local experience.
Yep.
So if you are not a local specialist, you're not really adding a huge amount of value. And, I tell you, the mistakes that are made by people that are not local specialists is huge. Mm-hmm. So you need to invest in an area where you know the good streets, the bad streets. You know the types of property that are attractive to buyers in good times and bad. Because anything that's easy to buy is difficult to sell. And being difficult to sell is a killer for capital growth. And they also know the agents and who is going to, because I'm not saying all off markets are bad, just some are, right? A lot are, but some are great. Yes. And so it's knowing how to work those different market conditions to your advantage, when to actually be, looking for those off markets versus when not to, when to go to auction versus when to make an offer prior, when to negotiate and how to negotiate with different agents, because different agents have different ways of approaching the negotiation process, and their history with those agents will inform all of that. How to avoid buying the sort of lemon that is going to become a problem to either rent out when vacancy rates start rising, or to sell down the track when you need to sell it. All of those pitfalls, or in flood zones or bushfire zones, there's just so many pitfalls for the unwary. And I can tell you that when we were filming the show, Location Australia, I was going all around the country and I was acutely aware of how out of depth I was in areas where I did not know. I had such a steep learning curve because I was humble about that. I knew what I didn't know and I had to learn it. Whereas a lot of these buyer's agents have a level of arrogance about them that they are able to learn and that data is enough and that's all they need to worry about. So I'd be questioning them really hard on the art and the science, getting them to separate that out. The science is the data. That leads you to a location. Tell me about the art. Tell me about how you've added value in surprising ways to your clients. Now, if they can't tell you stories about how they've negotiated or how they've identified opportunities or how they've pulled their client back from buying a property that they would otherwise have purchased, if they can't tell you stories like that, you got to start thinking, hang on a minute, it all sounds too good to be true. And so I'd be looking for that length of experience. I'd also look at verifying their qualifications and their memberships. So if they say they've got a license, or they're buying in Perth for argument's sake, do they have a license in Western Australia as well as wherever you're talking to them in? And check those local Office of Fair Trading websites. There are state registers and territory registers everywhere you can check. I'd also check if they claim to be a member of PIPA, if they claim to be a member of REBA, if they claim to be a member of the REA, check. Because there are a lot of people that are making false claims or they don't realise that they're not a member, because someone else told them they did it and they haven't even thought that you need to be a member. I mean, there's crazy stuff like that goes on. So you want to make sure that you're verifying these people. And the other thing I would say, and I'm sure you can add to this list, Michael, ask them to show you evidence of their due diligence process and particular also their pricing process. If they press a button and give you a report from CoreLogic, which gives you an estimate on price, then run a mile.
Well, some are also there's now a great program you can buy that you can come out with it spits out a property strategy that the client fits all the information in, and it's a one size fits all. So that doesn't work either. And they want to be a property strategist as well as a buyer's agent. So buyer's agents definitely have a role. I think we both agree with that. And if you're starting off, I think you've got to get experience. You've got to learn along the way. You either come from real estate or if you're coming from a different industry, but it's hard to get a job. I know you and I, in our companies, we wouldn't employ these enthusiastic amateurs. So how does somebody who wants to get into the industry, how do they learn these skills, Veronica?
It's a really good point. And here's a problem. Because buyer's agents buyer's agency tends to attract these entrepreneurial types that want to run their own business. So the amount of small one-person bands and micro businesses in this space is enormous. The other thing I would say, and it's scary, but nobody seems to know how many buyer's agents actually exist. And so this just shows how nobody really takes us seriously. Nobody takes the risk seriously. And so there are best estimates are around 2,000 buyer's agents in this country. There's something like 70,000 sales agents. So that's best estimate, right? And honestly, I've got no guarantee that being right. That's like ask the public, right? So if there are 2,000 buyer's agents out there, and the majority are tiny little micro business, very few that employ, a number of people, then you're going to find it very difficult to find a job, which then feeds into the problem again, because that then feeds back into the idea, well, if I can't get a job, I'm going to have to create my own job, which is set up my own business. So if you are in that situation where it's the only way you're going to get into the industry because you can't find someone who's going to employ you, and fair call, because it takes a long time. I've trained a lot of buyer's agents in my time. And then they go and set up business for themselves because they're entrepreneurial, right? So it's just one of the problems of the industry. And so once again, there's all these little businesses. There's not one growing business. There's split-offs, right? So it is very difficult to find a mentor and find somebody to work for who has the experience and also has the ability to teach you how to do the job. And that's one of the reasons I created the Buyer's Agent Mentoring Program, was because if you can't get it, then we have to have a proxy for it. And so that's really the best that I can offer is a program where you are amongst other people who are sort of similar. It only attract people who are new to the industry or they're doing their Cert 4. Nobody who has yet to qualify. Everyone's got skin in the game in the sense that they've started investing in making this their career, but they have to learn the foundational skills because you don't learn them in the training that gets you your license, as we've discussed.
Yep.
So it's the next best thing. Ideally, you get a job for somebody else, but those jobs are not common.
That's hard at the moment. So if people are interested in becoming a buyer's agent, how do they find out about your buyer's agent mentoring program?
Well, everything that I do is on veronicamorgan.com.au, so you can sort of get there and navigate yourself there pretty quickly. I do have on there, there's an eBook on there, which is how to become a buyer's agent. So that will actually take you through the steps, so you can download that very easily. And for people that already are a buyer's agent, but they're very early on, and particularly if you might be working for someone else that you're thinking, I'm not really sure they're that skillful, or you are working for yourself, you set up your own business and you're thinking, I don't even know really what I'm doing here. Then I've got a little tiny 14-day mini boot camp that you can download. You can get access to. Actually, I don't even think that's on there. I think that's on social. But anyway, if you get hold of the
links
ebook
in the show notes, Veronica. You'll give them to me, and we'll leave links in the show notes.
I'll give you the link in the show notes, because the reality is that it is a very murky pathway. The licensing pathway is quite clear, but then from then on, it's as murky as all get up.
So what we're now saying is that you can get your license, but now you, through your buyer's agent mentoring program, are going to teach you the skills that it's taken you 20 years to learn. Why make mistakes when you can actually learn the shortcuts, stand on the shoulder of your mentors and get there much further and faster? So I've really enjoyed our chat today, Veronica, and clearly we've got a similar view that buyer's agents definitely help level the playing field. I believe all home buyers and investors should invest in it, because a good buyer's agent will pay for themselves many times over by stopping you making mistakes, not necessarily by getting you the cheapest price, but by helping you not be as emotional as you may be. But again, be careful who you choose as a buyer's agent. And if you're interested in getting into the field of buyer's agency, why not explore Veronica's buyer's agent mentoring program? And as I said, I'll leave a link in the show notes. And again, I listen to your show, The Elephant in the Room Property Podcast, every Monday when it comes out, and I'd leave a link in the show notes to that too, because I'd highly recommend it. It's a great show. I think the full and forecast report that comes out every year is going to have some interesting names in it, and you gave me a hint, including mine. And yes, I got some forecasts wrong last year. I'm big enough to say that. Let's see how my forecasts are this year, Veronica.
Absolutely. We'll be tracking you now.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
In a moment, I'm going to share with you my popular mindset message. But before I do, I just want to follow on my conversation with Veronica. Now, you can see how passionate she was, and in fact, I am, about making sure people get the right advice. We know the statistics show that about 50% of people who get involved in property investment sell up in the first 5 years. And we also know that those who stay in the game of only about 1%, in fact less than 1%, end up owning 6 or more properties. 92% of investors never get past their second property. They're making the wrong decisions because they're getting the wrong advice. And that's why we believe it's critical to have a professional on your side. Now, I know you're probably thinking, yeah, these guys have got a barrow to push. But yes, we have. But remember, I have no properties. Metropol have no properties for sale. And in fact, even before you see a buyer's agent, and we have a fantastic team of buyer's agents in the big capital cities around Australia, and we have some great affiliates in some of the other locations as well. But even before you look at the next property, we believe it's important to start by putting a strategic plan together. Strategic investors are currently getting their ducks in a row, planning for the next stage of the cycle. So if you're looking for a proven, time-tested strategy for the current market and beyond, one that's got a strong track record, then please have a chat with my team at Metropol. Go to metropole.com.au and find out about what we can do. I firmly believe that property investment is a process, not an event. You've heard me say that over and over again. And the eventual property you buy is going to be the physical manifestation of a whole lot of important decisions you've got to make and make in the right order. So it starts by putting a plan together. We can provide you with time-tested, proven frameworks that I've fine-tuned over 5 decades. So even before you think about a buyer's agent, you've got to have a strategic plan. Now, a lot of buyer's agents will tell you, oh, I'll do a plan for you, I'll be strategic. They can't be if they only know one area. In fact, there's a number of good firms doing strategic property planning, but it's really only a handful. Most buyer's agents are order takers. Now, they're good at what they do. Some are not, as we've said, but beforehand, do what the smart investors are doing. Plan to become the person you plan to become. Go to metropole.com.au. I'll leave a link in the show notes.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
I'd like to run a little quiz. It's been estimated, it's been suggested that there's going to be 25 million of these by 2100 at the end of this decade, 80 years' time or so. 25 million what by 2100? Take a guess what I'm talking about. Is it electric vehicles? Maybe household robots? Could be wild elephants, centenarians, or streaming services per household. Let's have a look. Okay, electric vehicles. Well, I think there's going to be many more than 25 million. Estimates suggest there's actually going to be 145 million electric vehicles on the road by 2030. Maybe there'll be 25 million household robots. Well, we know that domestic robots, they offer all sorts of things now, don't they? Not just lawn mowing and vacuuming and mopping, but even companionship. So it's estimated there's probably going to be about 55 million domestic bots sold next year alone. Okay, so is it going to be the population of wild elephants? Well, from 1989 to 2018, the number of elephants in the wild doubled to 34,000, reported by earth.org. So no, it's not going to be wild elephants. Maybe it's going to be streaming services. Well, currently, we've got Foxtel, I've got Netflix, I've got Amazon Prime. So most households apparently have got 4 streaming services. Sure, there's room for growth, but there's not going to be that many. You know what it's going to be? There's likely to be 25 million centenarians. The world is in the midst of a longevity revolution, and by 2100, there may be as many as 25 million people aged 100 years or older around the globe. And that's according to sources cited by Science Direct. The world's 65 and older population is growing rapidly. Hey, I'm over that age, so I'm happy about that. According to the most recent population estimates from the United Nations, they suggest that 1 in 6 people in the world will be over the age of 65 by 2050, and that's up from 1 in 11 in 2019. The latest projections also show that the number of people aged over 80 is going to triple in the next 30 years. The number of people aged over 80 is going to triple in the next 30 years, and in many regions, the population aged 65 will double by 2050, while global life expectancy beyond 65 is going to be increasing by 19 years. So my message to you is that longevity, the fact that you're going to live much longer, deserves probably more thought than it currently receives. It's obviously an essential part of every financial and retirement plan. How long do you need to live off your assets? And we know you can't count on the government and the pensions to support you in your retirement. So what I've just mentioned to you should influence your saving goals, your investment choices, and your retirement income levels that you're planning for. And you've probably heard me say in the past, you need much more money. You're going to need much more money to enjoy your golden years than you most likely estimate. Once you retire, you're going to be experiencing the longest holiday of your life. So you should have enough money to enjoy it. Yet many people often underestimate their potential longevity. So on average, in good Western countries, people are living around 84 years of age, but that means that's an average. So if you're 65 now, you've got a 50% chance of getting to 84, but you've also got a 50% chance of living longer than 84. So my message to you is, when it comes to planning for your future, have above average expectations for the longevity, and also understand if you're going to be using property as a vehicle for your financial future, what sort of properties are going to be in continuous strong demand then? Look, if you think about it, you may be buying a property today that's, 20, 30, 40 years old, and you're going to retire in 20 years' time. That property will be, 50, 60 years old. And then you're going to want it to work for another 40, 50 years. It's going to be 100 years old. That's one of the reasons I'm not suggesting you buy 100-year-old properties now that are going to be 150 years old when you're in your retirement years. So a lot of thought has to go into what's the sort of property that's going to be in continuous strong demand, and the locations that are going to be in continuous strong demand, not just now and next year, but over the long term to secure your financial future. Well, thanks for spending the last little while with me, and I hope you got some benefit from this show. If you did, and you know somebody else who'd also benefit, please tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. There's a share button on every podcast app. On Apple Podcasts, there's 3 little buttons down the bottom. Press it and share it, or just tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. I hope you're going to be doing them a favour, and you'll definitely be doing me a favour and helping me in my quest to make as many people as possible financially literate. Now, there's ways of catching up with me between these shows. Just look for Michael Yardney on social media, or why not join my private Facebook group? Go to Facebook and look for the Property Update Facebook group. And I have a way of saying thank you to you for subscribing to this podcast. Go to podcastbonus.com.au. There'll be a link in the show notes, podcastbonus.com.au, where you can get a bunch of ebooks and reports. My way of saying thank you. And when you've got time, why not listen to some of the old podcasts? There's individual lessons in each of those that I think would be helpful for you. I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?